I'm your cult boyfriend. We're talking about the perks of being a wallflower today. And it was directed by Steven Chbosky, who also wrote the book. And the book's huge. Um, this film didn't come out while I was still in high school. It came out in like 2012, I think. Uh, I had been out of high school a few years by then, but the book was circulated through high school. I never read it. It just didn't appeal much to me, I guess. I can still speak that like to the significance of the story and of the characters, I suppose. And it looks like millennials and Gen Z both really associated strongly with these characters and with this story. Let's talk about the film because I don't know anything about the book. I'm just assuming that the film's a fine adaptation, considering the author directed it. I kind of wish the author didn't direct it. To be perfectly honest with you, because it's not a bad film by any stretch, by any means, by any rubric. It's not a bad film, but it is one note. Like it has one theme, one mood, one philosophy that it is entirely 100% devoted to. And it's going to spend the entire time exploring that singular theme, uh, completely uninterested in, well, truly like adapting or entertaining other sorts of philosophies or psychologies or themes. So I think that adaptation's important, and I think that um, different voices are entirely necessary when making a film. Because the one note of it all, the kind of static feeling like throughout this movie, like the fact that like within 10 minutes you can go, oh, I get it. I get it. I get the vibe, I get the mood, I get the point. That's never fun because then you're like, okay, like I guess 2 hours of this or whatever. Bully for me, yay! I'm so lucky because you already get the philosophy 10 minutes in, and there are no curveballs thrown. Um, I think it would be helpful. It's helpful to teen movies and teen shows to have different voices, different perspectives. Perks of being a wallflower is a one-trick pony. It has one card up its sleeve. It knows how to play one fucking chord, and it plays it nonstop. Um, all right, so that's criticism. But let's examine that. Does it play the one chord well? Does it play that one chord well? Yes, it does. It does. It might be one note, but that one note is never out of tune. Okay? The perks of being a wallflower is about what, like the benefits of being on the sidelines and how you're able to see people for who they really are. The theme that the film is most devoted to is trauma. Our main character, Charlie, puts everyone else's life ahead of his own, essentially because he can't face his own trauma. He cannot confront himself. So he'd rather get lost in others. Not only get lost in others, but deify those around him. Well, deify those like specifically with outsider qualities. Sam and Patrick, Emma Watson and Ezra Miller, who were both pretty good. Pretty impressed by the both of them. Ezra Miller specifically was exceptional in the film. So he kind of like deifies them. He makes some sort of emotional mythology around the physical poetry of them simply being alive. Like it's nice. It's very sensitive and tender. The scene in the tunnel where they're listening to Bowie's Heroes, uh, and Sam stands up and like puts her hands out like that, and Charlie can't help but just be fixated and intoxicated by her, by that feeling, a feeling that he calls infinite. That's well done. That's really nice. It is a magical moment. I do enjoy the quite cinematic or uniquely cinematic idea of a moment having or a moment possessing infinity. And of course, I love the romanticism of it. I love how romantic the film is, especially how that moment is best personified by this beautiful radical girl, a girl who radiates like John the Baptist, but looks so looks like an angel, like angels ought to look, at least to the person in that moment, to the wallflower. The perks of being a wallflower is how you can be intoxicated by the presence of others. It's a film that's primarily devoted to trauma. Um, and I suppose that's an interesting precursor to where the 2010s were at overall, right? Because horror in the 2010s devoted itself primarily to trauma as well. I'm thinking of films like Hereditary or The Babadook, like prim primarily devoted to exploring themes of trauma. And I guess that teen films were following suit, and The Perks of Being a Wallflower is definitely devoted to interacting with trauma. And the book, I think kids are traumatized. I think that growing up can be extremely traumatic. For sure, for a lot of different people. Some reasons are more legitimate than others, but we're all traumatized by something. Coming of age is can be a traumatizing experience, or can often be a traumatizing experience. Sometimes those experiences are repressed, like a family member molesting you. Sometimes they're hyper violent and explosive, like watching the boy you love get beaten by his homophobic father and you can just do nothing. Patrick asks, why can't we save anyone? Sam and Patrick both say, write about us, mythologize us. Perks of Being a Wallflower isn't interested in having some sort of emotional or philosophical discourse because it's already, I think, overly confident in its own premise. It's way too confident in itself from the get-go. It's a film that feels like it has nothing that it could possibly learn. It's not open to other ideas, to other interpretations or meditations or antidotes to trauma. Like it's not interested in those. It knows itself too well from the get-go, which is a kind of anticlimactic experience. A lot of the film does feel rather anticlimactic, and I really wish it wasn't directed by the author. I wish it was adapted entirely by someone else. You know, I feel that that's the source of most of my frustrations with the movie is just how the movie doesn't need me. There's no perks of being a viewer of the perks of being a wallflower. Like the movie doesn't need me to engage with it because the movie's entirely unavailable to open up a fresh dialogue with. Like it's not good art because it's not available for me to actually touch. It exists in and of itself. Like there's nothing for me to really try to twist out of it, 'cause a lot of these teen films are so deep, but you have to twist it a little bit. You have to really get in there, but most great teen films allow you to. They give you that wiggle room. They give you an inch and you pull it for a mile, right? Like you pull the meaning out of it for miles. With The Perks of Being a Wallflower, I'd be more charitable to how closed off I feel the film is. If the film wasn't trying to be really sensitive and trying desperately to be so tender, and I didn't feel tenderness from it. I'd be more charitable as well if it were a bit more complicated in its premise. It was a bit more complicated in its investigation of trauma, but there's something to be said about existentialist convenience. The film does feel very convenient, and maybe this comes down to it being a film that's a lot about designing a mythos around trauma. I do admire how close this film came to capturing how it feels to feel infinite. And I think everyone can relate to that feeling, especially from our youth. There are moments where you just feel unending, never ending, infinite. And this film came so close to capturing that, which is nearly impossible. Like, I'm very impressed by the tunnel sequence, but that feels to be the most, like, or truly the only cinematic part of the whole film. It's that. Is that. That's a really good moment. That's, oof, nice. Nice one. The rest I just feel like it's inconsequential because the film's statements on trauma are already expressed like within the first 10 minutes of the movie just by the vibe and the atmosphere. I need a little bit more. I don't care about like a twist, you know? I don't care about, oh, this kid was molested when he was younger. Big twist. No. And also, that's gross to do. To add that as part of a structure as like your big fucking peak moment. You know, you're giving trauma a fucking formula, like a narrative system to associate it with, like that existentialism at its most ineffective. The performances are really nice. Everyone does fairly well. I just don't think it's a very engaging movie because I don't find it very interactive, right? Uh, trauma. Trauma's a difficult thing to examine, not just in teen films or teen shows, but in every form of art. Uh, because you're going to have to make trauma conform to a narrative system, and when you do that, you run the risk of presenting a lifeless sort of trauma to us. And I feel like the perks of being a wallflower's version of trauma is lifeless, or it's contrived. That's how it feels. If the book's anything like the film, and I'm pretty confident saying it probably is a lot like the film, uh, it's speaking to those who feel outsiders, those who feel like misfits. When we first meet Sam, she does say, "Welcome to the island of misfit toys." It is a film that champions misfit identities, and I think that most people feel like outsiders, no matter how involved or how much of an insider they actually are. Most people feel like they're on the sidelines of something that's really important going on just out of view or just in front of you. I think most people feel like misfits, and we're exploring the traumatization of the misfits, or like understand that those on the fringes, there's a secret pain that's there. And that coming of age, if it's a deconstruction of youth, it's also a confrontation of trauma. And just like um, the way that actual teenagers are, and the way that a lot of us still are, they love to name drop. They love to believe that their taste says something extremely unique about them. It's a universe of feelings where mixtapes are the deepest representation of the giver's soul, where songs and books, the art that you like, expresses so much about you. It was so fucking cool to see Nina Dobrev on here, man. Just finished covering all of the Vampire Diaries. I got a soft spot for Nina now. Every time I see her, I'm just gonna go, oh, awesome, so cool. I loved seeing her here as Charlie's older sister. She was great. She did wonderfully with what she was given. God, she's so pretty. I think she's awesome. Definitely a queen of teen art, of teen shows, teen media, teen films. Definitely a queen. So glad that she was here in Perks Being a Wallflower. What a treat. And yeah, I can definitely see why this story, why these characters are so important. Because we're also going through rituals, rites of passage. You know, like the Rocky Horror Picture Show was a rite of passage for me when I was going to high school. I'm not sure if it still is, but a rite of passage for all the misfit kids, for all the goth and punk and scene kids. You know, it was a rite of passage for a certain sect, a certain clique of people, um, outsider people. And we're going through like, you know, the first kiss, the first girlfriend, the first relationship. But since our boy Charlie is so is dealing with some sort of repressed trauma that he can't confront within himself. He doesn't treat all of these first time things with the infinity that they deserve. He worships Sam, and the moments with Sam are eternal for him. And we do leave the film with like an not altogether healthier Charlie, because no one's altogether healthy if they're recovering from trauma, but a Charlie who knows how to recreate infinity. Like it's not a fleeting thing. They go back to that tunnel at the end of the movie, and for that moment in time, they're infinite once more. It just feels like I'm not important in this. Like the viewer is not important for the perks of being a wallflower, and I don't like things like that. The characters are real, but they're static beings. They're not dynamic becomings. Like they're static. They're not dynamic. I can't touch. I can't interact with them. Like Charlie, man, I'm glad that you see entire universes of passion within Sam's eyes, but I can't. Like I should be able to see that, but that's not translated well outside of the tunnel scene. Like it's not translated well. I think it's an entirely necessary coming of age movie, and I think it's significant because it is definitely a film about trauma within a decade that was devoted to investigating trauma within film and television, and maybe as a culture as well. Like in the US, I'm sure we were coming to terms with a lot of trauma, or at least that's when like the digital information age went completely like no holds barred, not just WikiLeaks and all that, but like the secret histories of every nefarious plot that the government has ever committed is now known to us, right? And that's a sort of repressed trauma that we didn't really know that we had. Or, post 2001 kids all have this kind of weird shared repressed trauma about like the psychological black magic fuckery that happened after the terror attacks of 9/11. Like there was something fucked up that happened to all of us. I think that trauma is an interesting topic to investigate, and I'm glad a teen film did investigate it. I just wish it investigated other things. I wish it investigated trauma from more than one angle as well. Instead of this extremely sentimental and nostalgic one. I wish we kind of investigated it in a way that felt more immediate. Uh, that's it. But didn't hate the movie. Don't really want to say anything else about it though. Thank you for watching the video.